am Vinnie Tortorich. Folks, your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, guaranteed. It's the Wednesday show. And yes, he's back by popular demand. I'm talking about Mr. Chris Shaffer. Yeah. Chris, I don't know if I talked to you about this on the air, off the air, but I saw a before picture of you.
Of Fat Chris.
Yeah, you were on someone else's podcast, and there was they put a before picture up or something, and I was like, yeah, Chris told me he used to be heavy, but Chris never showed me a photo of heavy Chris. Now, I know you got a couple of articles there, but can we delve into Fat Chris for a bit?
Yeah.
You mind?
Let's do it.
So,
there's a lot to delve into, or there was, I guess.
Okay, enough of the fat jokes, Chris, even though we're talking about you.
Am I allowed to make fat jokes about myself? Is that how that works?
When Chris sat around the house, he sat around the house.
It's just turned into an episode of Fat Albert.
Yeah. When Chris walked backwards, you would hear a beeping sound. You know, all the really bad
Just about
jokes. If Chris got any bigger, he'd have his own zip code. You know, all the stuff people say when you're heavy. And by the way, I've always said, you know, I've been a champion of overweight and morbidly obese people because I've been working with them my entire life. Most everyone in my family is morbidly obese. And I was getting there right after college football and decided, I didn't go, hey, I'm going to turn this into a career. I just decided to fix me, right? I had the degree, I had everything else. And I went, oh, wait a minute. Now other people want me to fix them. I didn't think it would become, here I am 40 some odd years later, still doing this, right? So that's why I know all the bad jokes. I've heard them all. Every morbidly obese person, anyone who's even slightly obese knows all the jokes, right? And none of it is helpful, right? No one wants to hear it, and I don't blame anyone. You know, as I've always said, people who are fat know they're fat. They don't want to be reminded of it. And I've talked about this on the show before. I was out to dinner with a neighbor, and she's really skinny. She's one of those old-time skinnies. She's old-timey skinny where she literally doesn't eat and thinks that's a virtue, right? So now she's getting close to 70, and there's no muscle. You know, she's one of those like, back in the old Babe Paley days. Do you know who Babe Paley
anorexia?
was? Yeah, but she was doing, you know, there was a time when we were just rich women. When I was working in New Orleans, they just wanted to be, they would tell me, just turn me into a clothes hanger because they all had couture and all this kind of stuff, all these old oil baronesses and the whole thing. So they have all the money in the world. So the only thing they have going for them is their looks. And they would say, hey, turn me into a clothes hanger. They would tell me, I want to see my clavicles. I want my clavicles to look like a clothes hanger. When I wear strapless, blah, 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 to the da-da-da. My job was to keep these women dry thin, right? Just, I mentioned Babe Paley, you know, the wife of, you know, William Paley, who ran Hollywood for a while. If you look up Babe Paley and throw a picture up, people will see what I'm talking about. All of these people, Helen Gurley Brown, right, who started the whole women's movement back in the 60s and 70s, you know, with Cosmopolitan magazine. All these women were painfully thin. The models back in the day, there was actually a model named Twiggy, right? That was the look. You had to look like Babe Paley or Twiggy or any of these people. You had to be painfully thin. And that was the look back then. No other way to look at it, right? So anybody that wasn't that. So that's how my career started. I was keeping uptown New Orleans looking like that, looking like their heroes, right? Never thought it would turn into a career. And before I know it, I'm looking around and I'm seeing kids getting fat because I was also the strength and conditioning coach at a high school, Newman School, famous Newman School. That's where the all the there's quarterback high school, if you want to, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, and now Arch Manning, all from that high school. That's where I did strength and conditioning, right? I started looking around. I was like, wait, I graduated high school back in 81. I'm now teaching at a high school in 85, and the kids looked different already, right? There was a layer of fat coming on. And that was during that time period, you see, when I was in college, that everyone started eating pasta. Pasta on top of pasta on top of pasta, because a stupid book came out that says that fat burns in the flame of carbohydrates. And boy, we never looked back, right? So that's where we are with fat. And now, I'm looking at Chris. I've never seen fat Chris. So Chris, let's do a deep dive. Let's take a big old swim in Lake Shaffer. So how tall, how old are you, and how much do you weigh now?
So, but before we do that, Vinny, you were talking about Twiggy and old-timey models. And all I could think of was old cigarette ads, right? You want to be skinny? Smoke more, right? Yes. Not only should you not be eating food, but you should be smoking cigarettes.
Well, doctors used to tell pregnant women if they didn't want to gain too much weight during pregnancy to smoke.
Yeah.
That was a real thing, bro. And if you think that was in the 1940s, doctors were recommending that in the early to mid 1970s. I kid you not. Right? You would see mothers with a kid on the hip with a cigarette in the other hand. That's how you lost the weight after that. That was a real thing. Right? So go on, Chris. Let's take a big old swim in Lake Shaffer. How tall, how much do you weigh now, and how old are you?
So I'm not going to cheat and say, oh, I'm right around 6 feet. I'm a solid 5'11". Right now, somewhere around 175, 178.
Okay.
Depends.
So you and I are about the same size.
Yeah. I found out that my scale is 20 pounds off, which is interesting.
20 pounds off? What do you mean?
We moved into this place and there was a scale here, right? And I jumped on it the other day. It said 154. And I was like, that's not right.
Wow.
It was like, is it in kilograms? Because that wouldn't be right either. But it made me feel very underweight for a couple minutes. But then I realized I had Michelle jump on and she said, yeah, it's about 20 pounds off. So somewhere between 170 and 180. I don't tend to weigh myself that much because it doesn't fluctuate that much.
Right. Okay. And how old are you?
36.
Okay. At your heaviest, what did you weigh?
Somewhere between 260 and 270.
Okay. So you've lost almost 100 pounds and you've put on muscle in that time because you go to the gym all the time. So, right. So you've actually, you've gained some muscle in the whole thing. So you've effectively lost about 100 pounds.
Yeah.
How? What did you do? Give us your recipe.
I stopped. Well, the first thing I stopped doing was drinking. So, I mean, not water, but beer, liquor, all that.
That you were assuming it wasn't water, Chris.
Yeah. As I took a swig of water right before we started having this conversation, but I was 22 or 23 and was at lunch with my boss at the time and stood up after lunch and blacked out and woke up in not an emergency room, which great boss, by the way, taking me to the urgent care, not the emergency room. No, just kidding. An urgent care. And I had blacked out from pain from a gallstone. So I stood up and just had blinding pain and hit the ground and kind of came to in the urgent care. And they gave me an ultrasound and, of course, made all of the obligatory jokes about, oh, haha, you have twins, yada, yada, yada. And then said, hey, we'll call you in a couple days and tell you what's up. And a couple days later, the doctor called and he said, hey, I have some good news. You don't have gallstones or gallbladder disease. but I also have some bad news. You have both. And I was like, well, that's fun. That's probably not the best way to break that to a patient, but whatever. And he said, basically the only option for this is surgery. So we have you scheduled to go in for a surgical consult in like a week. Go do it, see what the surgeon says, and we'll go from there. Went in for the consult, and like 4 days later, they took my gallbladder out. And coming out of that surgery, they tell you that you can't ever eat anything that's high fat ever again, that you need to eat a higher carbohydrate, lower fat, lower protein diet, stick to your whole grains, stick to whole fruits and vegetables, all of those kinds of things. And I was already not a tiny person.
Right.
I was probably right around the 210 probably at that point. And just started blowing up because I was doing nothing but eating more pasta, more rice.
Right. So it got bad at that point, right? Chris, what you reminded me of? I pulled it up already, but I want you to pull it up because we could show it. If you pull it up, we could put it up on the screen. Do you know? Pull up the Heather McDonald fainting on stage, and you'll find like a 1-minute clip. Do you know this story?
Is she the one that said, "Oh, I got all my vaccines and then passed out"?
Yeah. And then everyone thought she was joking because she just collapsed. But you could tell she's not joking because she literally cracks the back of her skull as she's going down on stage, and literally had a fracture in her skull. It's the most amazing thing. She's going, "Ha ha, God," or something like that, and she literally passes out. It's the most amazing. She could have been talking about anything when she passed out, right?
It just so happens that you're talking about a controversial health topic, yeah.
But here's the deal. Listen when we play the video. I want you guys to listen at home if you can, because Heather is actually breathing heavily. Like you could tell she's having trouble on stage because she starts taking these deep breaths. And then I think Wendy Williams went down like that on television once, where a couple of deep breaths and then they just go out. Did you find it, Chris?
Yeah, I have. Oof.
That's hard to watch. So you turn off right there. But you can hear she starts breathing heavily, right? And she just went down, man. Down goes Frazier. It's like oh man, it's rough to watch, but it's one of those things, right? Where you stood up at a restaurant and down. Have you ever passed out before or since?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, that was the only time. And I remember standing up. I remember going down, and I don't remember anything after that. I would say the barbecue was almost worth it. Given that there don't seem to be any long-term consequences of it, probably do it again. But they say you'll never do this again. You have to eat the higher carbohydrate diet. And I was doing the thing that most people in early 20s do, right? I was going out every weekend, Friday night, maybe Friday night and Saturday night, having a couple drinks, eating crap in, the bar or next to the bar, and just blew up.
We're talking 2010-ish because that's about, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I graduated college in 2009, so like 2011 probably.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Go on.
And I don't remember exactly when it was. It was probably right around that time. Somebody posted a picture of me on Facebook that they took. It's like, who's that fat guy? Right? Like, not that I didn't realize that I was not, a trim athletic guy, but it was definitely one of those like, oh my God, right? Like how, because you find ways to not look at yourself, right? And I don't know about you. I don't spend a lot of time looking at myself in the mirror.
Oh, I spend no time. That's why I don't like to shave, because I hate looking at myself.
Yeah, I walk around the bathroom when I'm brushing my teeth. Like, I don't stand there and do that. It's just I've never seen a reason for it. So I knew I was a big guy. I just didn't realize how big I was. and it's a picture of me in Disneyland, standing next to Curious George, and I have a bigger belly than Curious George does. Right? Who's like, he's
Wow.
got that like little baby belly thing going on, the little
Yeah,
baby
yeah,
belly.
because he's a little monkey with
Yeah,
the little gut, the little distended gut.
yeah. And I was
It's
like,
cute. Yeah.
that's not cool. So I should probably do something. And the first thing I did was just stopped drinking, because anybody that knows me knows that the only thing that changes when I drink is I'm me just louder. So my personality
Yeah.
doesn't change, and I'm just louder and have a hangover the next day. So there's really no point to that. And I saw a little bit of a fluctuation there. I dropped a few pounds. I said, if I'm going to take this seriously, I need to start figuring something out. And did a little bit of digging. And I think the first thing I came across was Forks Over Knives on Netflix, because it was the only thing that was like a health related thing, right? I was like, okay, I'll
Right.
do this. And it's not like I could look at anybody in my family, because my family is not my size. Let's put it that, my size now. So I did what a lot of people do, and I was like, oh, well, I guess I have to be vegan. And that lasted like 3-4 weeks until I was like, I'm tired all the time, right? I need some meat. So I watched another couple documentaries and did a little bit of digging. I was like, maybe I can be pescatarian, right? And that helped a little bit. And then added some red meat back in almost immediately after that, because it's just the gateway drug, right? Fish is the gateway drug to get back to meat. And just did a deep dive into basically every different approach, right? And said, okay, if meat works for me, what can I do? And had the little voice in the back of my head of the doctor saying, hey, you can never eat high fat again. You have to eat higher carbs. And said, you know what? I seem to do better going the opposite, other than the fact that I'm running to the bathroom immediately after I eat. But that happens sometimes when I eat high carbs anyway. So what the hell difference does it make? I'll try going low carb, because keto was still a dirty word back then. This is probably
Right.
2012. And saw an immediate difference in energy levels, saw an immediate difference in weight loss, in just how I felt generally. And I think you and I have talked about this, but back in the day, before I found out I had a gluten allergy and celiacs and a bunch of other problems, which is actually probably what resulted in me having the gallbladder taken out to begin with, I was a straight caffeine addict. I love
Right.
coffee. I like caffeine, but I needed 500 to 600 milligrams of caffeine to be awake. As soon as I
That's
went low
crazy.
carb, that went away.
Yeah.
Right? Now I can actually enjoy the caffeine that I'm taking in and not just pound it for the sake of, if I want my brain to function, I need that.
Yeah. You were medicating with caffeine, whereas it's better just to enjoy coffee.
Yeah. And I assumed that that was normal, because the adults that I had been around, not my parents necessarily. My mom drinks coffee now, but they were never coffee people. But my entire adult life, right, through university and my first couple jobs, what do people do in an office all day? They're freaking bored. So they just pound
Right.
coffee, right? And so the boss that had taken me to the hospital owned a small coffee company, right? And drank coffee out of a mug like this all day long. And so I just assumed that's what adults did, because you don't have that energy anymore. And as soon as I made the dietary switch, I saw that difference. And so after about a month, all of the side effects, right? The running to the bathroom immediately after eating high fat meals basically went away. And my doctor said, went in for a checkup, and he said, oh, so you're doing like a lower carb thing. How's that treating you? Said, at this point, I don't really have any issues. And he said, okay, it must be because you're growing a new gallbladder,
Okay.
was their answer to that. And I guess there are some like fringe cases where, because I had it out at 20, somewhere between 21 and 22.
Did in fact, because there are a lot of people without gallbladders. There's a whole section of people on my website and in a VIP group with no gallbladders. Doctors told them never eat fat again, and they didn't feel healthy again until they started eating fat, and they're doing just fine with no gallbladders. Folks, this is not medical advice, but you're hearing another guy here say the same thing. Chris?
Yeah. I was the youngest person that surgeon had ever operated on, and the only man. that surgeon had ever operated on. Youngest by 20 years, by the way.
Oh, wow.
And they said, "Oh yeah, you must be some sort of medical miracle, right? Like we've seen some cases where your body after a certain amount of time gets tired of just having bile dumped into it and like a part of your intestine will basically take over that job." I'm like, "Okay, whatever. I don't care what's happening. I feel better, so I'm just going to keep doing that."
Yeah.
And 2-3 months after that, added in a lot of the exercise component of it, which was mostly just going to the gym, right? Started
Yeah.
with just a basic like 5x5 workout, something like starting strength, which we've talked about in the past, and haven't looked back since. And it was not not a life changing month. It was not I didn't drop 100 pounds overnight, but it came off pretty quickly. I mean, within probably 2.5 years, I was down to about where I am now, more or less. And then it's been less fat, more muscle since then.
There you have it, folks. That's why he's the hottie you're looking at here today. That's an amazing story. You and I lost about the same amount of weight. I was up to, what was it, 275, I think 275, something like that. And again, didn't know it. Never, because I wasn't a guy that looked in the mirror. I would, after football, I just kept going to the gym. I wasn't on the training table anymore where they gave us, tons of eggs and everything for breakfast. I mean, you can make bad decisions. They had all the other stuff there, cereals and everything. But I was like, wait a minute, all the eggs and bacon you can eat? Really? Okay. Lunch. Let's see. Are we going to go with the chicken, the steak, or the fish today? I think I'm going to have all three. Right. I couldn't believe what we got to eat on training table when you're a D1 athlete, right? That you get everything. And so I was able to stay. And yeah, I had mashed potatoes and, a rice or whatever. But you're young and you're a D1 athlete, you're working out all the time. And I was built like a brick shit house, right? And then all of a sudden that goes away. And I learned about a little something called ramen noodles, right? And pasta. Like I would go to the store and buy the cheapest. It's like, all right, the vermicelli's on sale from, oh wait, there's a company where it just says pasta. Remember they would do generic stuff? Yeah.
Did at Tulane, did you guys have milk bars?
You mean tiger milk?
No. So like a place with a bunch of different milk options in the cafeteria. So Penn State
No,
is
no,
famous
that
for
wasn't a thing.
their agricultural programs, right? And if you
Right.
walk into any of the cafeterias at Penn State, even to this day, they have like the soda machine that you can get, unlimited soda, which is a great choice. But then they also have a milk machine because they have herds of dairy cattle, right? The Penn State Creamery is famous.
We had the milk. All right, so we had the milk machine. It was just one milk. You just put the
Oh
thing under the
no.
thing and milk would come out.
Oh no. It was full fat, 2%, 1% skim, and then, chocolate, strawberry, right? Anything that you wanted with a whole bunch of fat and sugar in it to make you happy.
Right.
That is where I went off the rails, right? I was never super fit, but I was also not fat until I went to college. Combined drinking with unlimited full fat milk, unlimited food basically, and then all of the other not sleeping and randomness that comes with going into college. I probably jumped 50 pounds in 2 or 3 years. And then after leaving, went on that same path that you did, right? Now I'm on my own. I was living with my brother, and let's just say we didn't make the world's healthiest choices. We cooked most nights of the week, but that was accompanied with a cocktail or two. That was accompanied with 9 pounds of pasta. And then if you're watching sports or you're watching something late at night, maybe you order an extra set of wings, right? And you gained another 25, 30 pounds in that year. And
Yeah.
between 20 when I graduated college and I guess I just turned 21. So 21 and 24, I somehow managed to gain 100 pounds between just lifestyle changes and whatever happens when you start to get over that hurdle.
Yeah. I just remember not being able to, I just want my stomach to be full. And so pasta and rice became the mainstay. Right. And I would buy cans of tuna fish on sale so I can get some protein in. I was still eating eggs for breakfast, but everything else during the day. One of the meals I would make is my grandmother gave me a slow cooker. No, there wasn't a slow cooker; it was a rice cooker where you would pour in X amount of rice. You would measure it with a rice, with a cup, and then you would pour in the proper amount of water, and then the rice would cook, and then you would hear ding. That means it was ready because the water had evaporated, and a little spring-loaded thing would come up, and the rice was perfect every time, right? So I'd cook a big thing of rice every night, and I would take a can of tuna fish. I know it sounds gross, folks. I would add olive oil to the rice to moisten it up a bit, black pepper, salt, and I would pour a can of tuna fish in and just mix it up, and that's what I would eat. And I was just getting heavy and heavy, and did not notice it, did not know it until the great Janie Friedland, when I explained to her that my Levi's must have been shrinking up in the dryer, and she started laughing. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Sweetie, you're getting fat." And I was like, I've told the story on the show. I did a double bicep. I said, "Look at these guns." She goes, "Yeah, you still got your guns. Your legs still look great, but you're getting fat. You have a big, giant gut on you now." I still had the big chest. I was still bench pressing. I wasn't at 405 pounds anymore, but I didn't want to be. I was like, if I could do 185, twice or something like that, it was better than doing 405 once, right? I was getting weaker, meaning I didn't have to have that kind of strength anymore. I didn't want it anymore, right? It's like, where does this end up? What am I doing, right? I just wanted to work out and stay in shape. So that's what was happening, and did not realize that while I was trying to stay in shape, still working out, put on a ton of weight. Most of it was around the middle and in my ass. I mean, when I looked onto my rib cage and everything, I gotten bigger all the way around. My face was fatter. Didn't even notice. You got to look in the mirror and shave. And it did not occur to me that my face was fatter. And it didn't occur to me.
I guarantee you somebody listening to this is going, how do you not know? Because you get accustomed to it, right? It's not like it happens overnight. So Vinnie, if you and I went out and we had a bender tonight,
right?
We're going to wake up tomorrow, look in the mirror and go, damn, right? You're really inflamed. You're going to see a lot of that water retention. When that becomes the thing that you see every day, it's not necessarily something that you pay attention to anymore.
Right.
And it takes someone pointing it out to you, whether it's Janie Freeland or seeing it in a picture or having, a Scott King moment where you're saying, man, I just can't do the things that I need to do anymore. And maybe it's looking down and not being able to see things that you used to be able to see, right? Whatever that moment is, you have to have that. And there is something, I don't want to advocate fat shaming, but also it would be nice if someone had pointed it out before it got to that point, right?
Well, so I've had people say to me, wait, all of a sudden your jeans got tighter. You didn't notice that happen. It's like, no, here's the deal. When you're playing football and your waist is 32 or 33 and your quads are 34 each. So my quads were bigger than my waist, right? I was that guy with the big giant quads. When you went out and bought Levi's, I would wear the 501s because they had the biggest legs, right? They had the big full leg on them. So I would buy like a size 38, right? A 38, 34. And the way football, if you look back, I guess maybe they make, everything is stretchable now. Nothing was stretchy back then. So you would just buy the 38s so they could fit over your quad and your big power driving ass, right? And you would just scrunch them up around the waist with the belt. And you would just try to kind of fix the pleats around your waist. So it kind of worked out. But no, football players just do not back in those days, we did not look good in clothes. You know, you would have to buy a shirt 5 times too big so it could fit around your 19-inch neck. But it didn't matter because whenever we had that fitting around our neck with the tie on, we had to have a jacket on anyway. So you were able to like scrunch up the rest of the shirt in the back, kind of hide it in the back, but you could never take your jacket off because then someone would see that you had weird looking clothes on.
Right. You were wearing your older brother's dress shirt. Yeah.
Right. Well, it was like, it was all, you know, it fit, but then there's all this extra room in the waist because everybody's built with a big chest, big neck, big shoulders, and a small waist. So we were always scrunching up. So I was growing into those jeans. I was growing into a 38, right? And could have noticed that I probably bought another belt. As a matter of fact, one of the belts I wore, remember the old army belts where you would just slip one side into the buckle and then it would just cinch up onto this latch?
Yeah.
I have one of those belts. I don't even have a leather belt, right? So again, you can't see it. You know, it's just, you're not seeing loops go out. You would just, it was just getting wider and wider.
Right.
And
You just go till it feels tight and then you clasp it.
And then you're done. You don't look and go, hey, I used to have 4 inches hanging off this end. Now I have 0 inches. I'm barely getting it to work. You probably see it, but don't see it, or you suck in enough to get it to work and then you let it go. And it just didn't occur to me. That's why when people go, do people not see themselves getting fat? The answer is no. No, because I didn't see it, right? You don't see it until you see it, until Janie goes, you're getting fat. And I didn't believe it when she said it, but I was like, well, Janie's never lied to me before, right? We have a pretty honest relationship, right? We weren't boyfriend, girlfriends. We just kind of dated around. We were very honest with each other. We were just good friends. I guess we dated for a short period, but not for real. You know what I mean? We were more friends than we were like lovers or anything. So the weird thing is that she was very honest with me in that moment. And that night when I got out of the shower, I looked into that full-length mirror that someone left on the back of my door, the person that had the apartment before me, and I had to get real with myself, right? And that's what this whole podcast is about, is looking at where you are now. That's why, you know, my friend Adam Carolla goes, don't you think we should fat shame a little bit? And I was like, no, I really don't, because people who are overweight, people who are morbidly obese, they know. Shaming them won't help. Giving them good information could help them if they take the information and go with it. That's the only option we have.
So what's the balance between handing them the information and giving them their Janie moment, right? Where it's like, hey, and is it just attitude, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm concerned about you.
That never goes well.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't for alcoholics or for anybody else either, but there is something to be said for, because if you're morbidly obese, that's one thing, right?
Right.
You have to be conscious of the fact that you're that large. And you and I in the past have talked about the whale, right? If you literally can't bathe yourself,
right,
you know that you can't bathe yourself. But if you're just fat, right? Like, I was not morbidly obese and I carried it fairly well because it's face, neck, thighs, stomach, right? That's how I gain weight for whatever reason. Who knows? And my whole family carries it like that. But if I had not had that moment, it would have been another few years before I had another chance. And so seeing that picture was one thing. In your case, somebody told you because you made a comment about it. So is there any credence to that? Or is it just, let's put out as much information as possible? Or when you find an opening, like, hey, my pants don't fit anymore. It's like, yeah.
And look, I can't give any advice on that. You know, if the opening is there and someone is asking and it's someone that cares about you and someone that loves you, that's the best way to do it. Someone, you walking down the street and someone calling you a fat ass or worse, that's never gonna, you know, that can make you go into a downward spiral and get you doing the wrong thing for the next year. right? So that's the problem I have with it. You know, my friend Dean Laurie, the guy that I wrote my book with, very close friend. Dean Laurie is completely bald. You know, he shaves his head completely bald every other day, I guess, whatever it takes. But he told me about that moment, you know, when he was directing something. He's basically a writer producer, but he also, back in the early days, I think it was he maybe directed Major Payne. I think he wrote it and directed it.
I know he wrote it.
He might have been one of the directors. He might have been the director. I'm not really sure. I think it was Major Payne. Or it might have been one of the Friday the 13th movies, or one of the ones he did like that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What does matter is the cameras roll even in between takes. Like when they say cut, sometimes the camera is still rolling. And when he was watching the dailies one night, they were watching the dailies, and he saw someone come into frame from a top view. And he was like, "Who's that dude? What was that, a key grip? I don't know who that guy is." And then that dude turned around and looked the other way, and he noticed it was him. He didn't realize that he was bald. You know, he still, you know, kind of like me, he still had, you know, hair in the front, but there's no hair in the back. He didn't realize he was bald, right? Because he just sees himself from the front. So you could just go, "Oh, I still have hair," right? But then he came home that night and took a mirror and did that thing where you look in one mirror and look with the other mirror and say, "Oh my God, I'm bald." And then he decided to go cue ball after that. Just, you know, go all Tellus Savalas and just cut it all off. And he's been doing that ever since, which is a great look for him, right? But he didn't know how, and he told his wife, he goes, "Honey, I'm bald." And she was like, "How did you not know that?" And this is the woman he lives with and he sees every day, and he's been married to for years. They got 2 kids together, and she just assumed he knew. And he didn't know. That's how you get fat and not know it. You can get bald and not know it. Right? That's the way it works. Bottom line. No two ways about it, Chris.
It's just one of those things. You get so used to seeing yourself on a day-to-day basis that until you see a picture from a while ago, or the first picture you've seen of you taken from a weird angle, right? Like in Dean's case, it's an overhead shot. When would you ever have seen that otherwise? Maybe you're going down a log flume at an amusement park and they take that picture and you go, "Man, I'm bald." But other than that, you're not going to get that kind of a picture taken of you on a daily basis. And you're not going to see that unless you're looking for it. Right. And nobody's ever going to say anything otherwise. Right. And that's how you end up with 3 wisps of hair being combed from here to here, going, "Oh, I still have hair." Right. And you don't realize that you're bald. It's the same thing with gaining weight. The interesting thing, Vinny, is we all seem to note pant sizes on the way down, but we don't on the way up. Like you mentioned 38 34s. I had a pair of 38 34s. And I remember pretty much every pair of pants I bought that was a size down, but I don't remember going from a 30 or a 32 to a 34 to a 36 to a 38. I just know I had the pants. Right? And you don't think about it, even when you're in that kind of environment. It's not something that occurs to you because you're there buying pants and you're buying a pair of pants that fit. And that's what you're there for. So it's not something that even comes up as a part of that conversation.
So, you know, on the same note, I remember Jim Harbaugh very well because we played college football at the same time, right? His brother, John Harbaugh, who's the coach of, I want to say the Ravens. Is it the Ravens? Yeah, it's the Ravens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm watching John Harbaugh this year during the playoffs. I watch every week, and, you know, I feel like I know the Harbaughs, right? And it's like, I'm sitting there going, John Harbaugh is looking old, man. He's an old man now. So then I looked up John. I was like, and then I went, wait a minute. I think Jim is my age. Maybe John is 2 or 3 years older than that. Please tell me he's 65. I looked the guy up. Not only is he 62, he's only 4 days older than me. And I'm looking at him going, man, that dude, look at him. Look at grandpa. Look how old he looks. He's 4 days. Look it up, Chris. I think when I looked it up, he was like
September 23rd, 62. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm born on the 27th, 62. We were born 4 days apart. He wasn't even dry yet before I was born, right? They were still wiping the plasma off of him when I was born, right? And I'm looking at this dude going, man, John Harbaugh is a little long in the tooth. And I'm realizing, oh, shit, I'm long in the tooth because we're the same age. And I was like hoping, it's like, no, I think Jim looks a little better than John. I think Jim and I are the same age. I think John's much older. Nope. Jim is 61. They're just like me and my brother. Are they Irish twins? Because me and my older brother are Irish twins. Let me look up Jim Harbaugh.
They're just outside of a year. Jim is December 23rd, 63.
Okay, yeah. So
they're like, I mean, they're Scottish twins. I don't know. They're almost
my
Irish.
brother and I are closer. Irish twins. The legal definition is you're born within the same year. My brother is on the 18th, and I'm on the 27th. So we're 9 days apart. 1 year later. So the Harbaughs and the Tortoriches were fucking at the same time.
What was going on in the Tortorich household in January?
And the Harbaugh household.
I mean, it's not like you live in Pennsylvania where you're snowed in for months at a time.
Yeah, but those guys, I love both of those guys because they're huge. They're so competitive, right? They're so competitive. Their whole life. I watched a thing on them once, and Jim was like, "Yeah, I saw John hitting a tennis ball against the garage door." And he told me he just did like 1,000 reps to work on his tennis or something like that. So he goes, I grabbed the racket and I went out there and did 1,200 reps, right? That's how you become a John and a Jim Harbaugh. You just keep challenging yourself. But yeah, you look at those guys and you go, oh man, they're long in the tooth. They were athletes. And I'm looking at them going, well, I was an athlete. I must look at least as bad as a Harbaugh, right? And as it turns out, I do. Sad. It's a sad tableau. But we're all there.
Yeah.
So it happens.
The bad news, Vinny, is you can't control the aging. The good news is you can control the weight.
Yeah.
It's very easy to do if you control what goes in. And it doesn't have to be that complex. Speaking
of the Harbaughs, they both look like they're in pretty damn good shape. Yeah. They keep themselves fit. Do you have, I know we got to go in a minute. Do you have any short story there? I mean, I think I think this was a good public service announcement to talk about what we talked about here, but do you have anything over there?
Yeah, I'll keep it to one. So I normally bring you in on the crazy things going on just to get you riled up, but I wanted to end your day today, Vinny, with just something that made me happy. Story out of the Telegraph this week. The anti-vegan backlash that is making Britain fall in love with meat again. Apparently, Gen Z is understanding that meat is not the end of the world. And that there are ways to eat meat that don't have to conflict with their moral concerns or whatever. And they're shunning veganism and vegetarianism in favor of a whole foods based omnivore diet. And they started looking at this because a large portion of people stopped doing Veganuary, which I know is your favorite month of the year.
Yeah.
And they wanted to find out why. And it turns out that they just like eating meat. And so meat sales in Britain have started to increase because Gen Zers are shunning vegan and vegetarianism in favor of eating whole food omnivore diets. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first off, I never followed Veganuary. What is it?
Veganuary?
Yeah. Yeah, I never followed that because I rather follow Hallmark's Love-uary. So that's the one I do. But on top of that, what are the concerns of Gen Z when they talk about the downside of meat? I know one of the things Gen Z, because the fearless leader, the how dare you girl, what was her name? How dare
Greta
you?
Thunberg.
Yeah, Greta Thunberg. Apparently meat was ruining the planet, or which was odd to me, because if you're going to get rid of beef cattle, if ruminants are ruining the planet, Bambi's got to go,
Well,
and every other ruminant needs to go. I think, isn't a giraffe a ruminant that needs to go?
yeah, they roam around and eat leaves off trees.
Yeah.
Giraffes, by the way, weirdest animal on the planet next to a platypus. Just no reason that it should actually exist. I don't get it. There's a
I
couple
like.
things. Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Have,
I love the
have you
giraffe.
ever watched giraffes fight?
No, but I'm sure it would be comical,
Oh my God,
right?
it's amazing. It's amazing. They headbutt each other, but not in the way that
Really?
you would think, right? Most animals, like sheep, right? Rams, they headbutt like this.
Yeah.
No, giraffes go like this, and they whip the whole neck around and just smack each other in the face. It's
Oh,
something you
because
need
they
to watch.
can.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
will. But all right, let's not get off on the tangent.
yeah. So
Um,
it's not giraffes, but there's a handful of things, right? And it wasn't even necessarily Gen Z. It was
mhm,
the millennials grew up with the propaganda of it's global warming, it's
mhm,
cow farts, it's
mhm.
slaughterhouses, it's all of those kinds of things. And by the way, if you eat a steak, right, every sitcom joke from the late 90s, early 2000s, oh, this is a great steak. I'm going to need some heart attack medication to go along with it, right? Might as well go
Yeah,
straight
can I
to the
order
hospital.
that with the cardiologist?
Is there a cardiologist here? I'm going to need one.
Yeah,
And we've slowly seen over the last 5 or 10 years, all of those things start to erode, right? We now know that cholesterol is not the enemy. We know that cow farts are not the reason that we have whatever flavor of climate change you think is the flavor of climate change, right? We know that it's a natural part of the methane cycle. We know that there's fewer ruminants now than there were throughout most of recorded human history.
right.
So that can't be the problem. And then when we look at the slaughterhouse issue or the animal welfare issue, which is how a lot of people get into veganism or vegetarianism to begin with, that was the thing, even above the health claims, right? That was the
Yeah.
thing that led me towards that path. It's like, I love animals. I love the way that animals taste, but you shouldn't be drowning a chicken in its own blood to harvest a chicken, right? Like that's just not cool. So I don't want to support that. But there's now all of the options around that. And I don't know how many times you've walked into a Whole Foods, but they have all the different like animal welfare ratings, right? A lot of places now have ways that you can get around that. And we've moved from monocrop agriculture and feedlot animals to more of a regenerative farming approach. And so people, it looks like, are embracing that and starting to come around.
Back in the 70s when everything was, the world was gonna, ice age was coming. I've lived through a bunch of them. If we don't change our ways, we're going to have an ice age in 10 years. Everything is always 10 years. And it's like, what do we have to do? Well, we got to go more hippy dippy, right? We need to farm your own food, buy your own cow, live like a hippie, live like a Mormon. That's the best way to do it. Well, okay, people in the city can't do that, right? We moved from farms into cities back in, the Industrial Revolution. Anyone hear of that? Hey, hippies, what do you want? Everybody to now leave the cities, go back to the farm? What do you? They had songs about that, going back to the garden, doing the whole thing. I get it; it was about Woodstock, but that's everything that was being written, and we got to get back to it. We got to go back to what we were doing before. Okay, we're not going to reverse the Industrial Revolution. Sorry, hippies. So I guess we're going to just have to all get a big heavy jacket and get ready for this onslaught of freeze. And then you're too young to remember this one, Chris, because you're only 36. They started telling us about acid rain.
Oh, I remember acid rain.
It's going to be the acid rain. Now, was that? Well, we won't even, and within 10 years, Within 10 years, we won't even be able to grow vegetables because the acid rain won't allow it, right? And so we went through the acid rain thing, right? And the song, the streets will have no name. Why? Why won't the street? Well, because the rain will wash all the signs clean, right? So streets have no names. You too. This famous song, right? You know the song, Chris?
I want to run. I want to hide. I want to tear down the walls that hold me inside. Yeah.
Yeah. Is this the song right here? Let's see if this is it.
It should be. I think it's Where the Streets Have No Name, right?
Yeah, I'll put in acid rain. Let's see if I can find it. I'm going to find it for the end of the show. How about that?
Yeah.
So then we went through that 10 years. Okay, so you get the idea, right? Streets have no name. Streets won't have any name because the acid rain is going to wash all the sign, right? That's the idea behind streets with no name. Okay, 10 years came and went. Streets still have names. We can still grow vegetables. Nothing happened. Where's the acid rain now? Right? What happened to the freeze that was supposed to happen by 1982? Acid rain was supposed to happen before 1995. Then we started hearing about global warming. And this was my favorite one because the image was a polar bear on a sliver of ice at the North Pole. And it's like, look at this polar bear. They had you believe the whole North Pole had melted and there's one polar bear left on one cube of ice. And if we don't change everything right now, this polar bear is going to drown. What they don't tell you is polar bears sit on those blocks of ice and look for fish, and they swim and they go catch the fish.
Well, they also fall asleep and it breaks off, right? And then they swim back.
Yeah.
Did you know, Vinnie, random fact, polar bears can swim up to 200 miles?
I did know they could. I didn't know it was 200. I knew they could go for a long way, but they're incredible swimmers, and they swim and catch fish all day long. And they'll use these blocks of ice to look and go catch a piece. So that's what polar bears do, right? But they had us believe that the whole cap of the northern cap and the southern caps, they were melting, and this polar bear was going to die by noon tomorrow. And if you had a house in Malibu, good luck, because the water was going to come up so high because of all the melted snow in the oceans that if you had a home in Malibu, you were fucked, right? It didn't stop anybody who was complaining about this from buying real estate in Malibu, by the way, right? Then that didn't happen. 10 years came and went. Polar bears still out there swimming and catching fish. The polar caps are still there because, in fact, we are living through an ice age right now because the North Pole and the South Pole are both glaciers. We still have ice. We're still in an ice age, folks. Don't know if you know that, but that's a fact. Okay? Then they went, God, we can't keep lying to them. We told them ice age, we told them acid rain, and we told them polar bears going to drown because of the heat wave. Hey, Fred, what you got? Hey, I know what. Let's just call it climate change. How does that work? We just tell them if they keep eating cattle, the climate's going to change. Well, guess what? We know that. You can look back at the Farmer's Almanac for 150 years. The Farmer's Almanac will tell you, guess what happens year in and year out? The climate changes. Right?
It sounds like you're advocating against taking care of the environment, which I know is not your point.
No. I'm not doing that at all. I'm just saying that they're lying about what the problem is.
Right.
The problem is India, China, and some of these places where, we could do all the stuff we want. We could take straws away in California. We can do whatever we want to clean up in the United States. We're a postage stamp on the map of the world. We're not doing a fucking thing. You want to clean up? You want to stop some of this stuff? Go to India. Tell them to clean it up. right? Because the one thing they don't have in India is one catalytic converter on anything. Cars, factories, you name it, trucks. They don't have catalytic. You know what we have in this country? Catalytic converters. We're not the problem. They are. The biggest problem in the world comes from India and China. So let's start with them, right? Oh, wait, you don't want to do that? Okay. Well, let's just keep complaining about something that we can't do anything about. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And I think the thing that's interesting, so first, the quote I thought you'd like out of this, Vinny. Young people particularly want more high protein food. The generation is always working out, not drinking alcohol, and is focused with two S's because they're British on flavors. I always say there's a reason humans have canine teeth. We need protein. What we're seeing with Gen Z is that they're moving back towards local wild food, which is not over processed. Things like venison, hare, and pheasant, right? So people are going back to wild game, to real food, and that's what's making the difference. I think there's a lesson in that, I think, for everybody. Whether your concern is the environment or your concern is just eating the right thing, if you know where your food is coming from, if you know what your food is, and it's not made of 500 different ingredients, you're doing something in the right direction. And I think the disservice, I think, that has happened is what often happens is you get a few different groups of people that come together because they have one thing in common, right? So you had a lot of people who were or are very concerned about global warming, climate change, whatever you want to call it, that were vegan. And they then found a reason to link that to veganism to bring in a whole bigger group of people. And they did themselves a disservice by doing something that's actually worse for the environment and saying, oh, we all have to eat only vegetables. You want to have a problem in the environment is force people to grow only vegetables, get rid of all of the ruminants, destroy the topsoil, and be reliant on fertilizer, which comes from what again, Vinny? Where do we make fertilizer from? Because it doesn't come from animals anymore. Oh yeah, petroleum.
Oh yeah.
Right. So by not doing the thing that we've done for the last, I don't know, a few 100,000 or million years, depending on how far back you want to trace humanity, we're actually making the problem that we're trying to fight against worse, instead of doing the thing that makes the most sense for us as human beings. And I think it's nice to see that people are finally coming around and realizing that the lies we've been told over the last 10, 15, 20 years, and even longer, were just that. And I think that's interesting. You and I talked a couple weeks ago, and I'm trying to think exactly whether it was on this podcast or whether it was on one of the VIP calls, about how long it took to understand that cigarettes cause cancer, and how long it took to realize from the time that they started talking about cholesterol till they decided that that was enemy number one, right? That was only a few years, and it took 35 years, I think it was, before the studies started coming out saying, maybe not so much, right?
Yeah.
And we're finally on the back end of that, right? The mid 80s, we were all being told, hey, here's, it's acid rain, global warming, cow farts. And that's all that we've heard for the last 25 or 30 years. And now all of the evidence is coming out on the other side. And we're seeing huge pushback from the younger generations to say, hey, this is what we need to do. And I think overall that's a good thing, right? Because if they're not going to have to deal with losing 100 pounds like you and I did, or more like a lot of the listeners of this podcast, I don't see any downside to that.
Right. And look, it's just the way that the world works. There's always, the pendulum always swings back in the opposite direction. And, that's where we are.
Yeah.
The pendulum is swinging. And by the way, folks, it's not going to keep going in this direction. It's going to go, it's going to go, it's going to go, and then it's going to swing back. So I won't be useful again until I'm probably 75, when I'm yelling about the pendulum being in the wrong direction again. Right? We're going to make that the final word, folks. Chris, everything in stock over at purevitamin.club.com?
Should be.
Good. Pure Coffee Club. People are buying our coffee. We've had a big resurgence in the coffee business, right? I mean, I'm saying we can't keep it in stock. We're never out of stock of coffee, right? We're always roasting, and we're always shipping out. And because we buy a lot of beans all at once, so that's always rolling. And foods. we are, and we got some excitement coming up. Everything's going to be on one site, and everything. Part of the problem when Chris and I took the company over and started moving it in the right direction. I know some people are going, "Hey, we're back fully stocked again." Every now and again, something falls. You got to realize, folks, when you have hundreds of thousands of people buying your products, something's going to slip through cracks every day. At my company, at Amazon, you name it. Not everything is 100%. It's just the way things go. That's why when people say, "Hey, I saw 2 things on Twitter the other day." Okay, out of 100,000 things we shipped that day, 2. Okay, I'll take that. We're getting better and better, and we're trying to get it down to 0. Chris, you look like you want to say something.
Oh, I'm just laughing because USPS is the bane of my existence right now. I was joking
That's usually a problem.
I was joking with Jackie the other day that we need to go back to the Pony Express or something because we have a handful of shipments, and usually what the issue is there's some sort of issue with the address, or somebody just lost the package along the way and doesn't tell anybody. But we had a bunch of orders of Ultra Salt that have gone all over the country. Right. So like an order.
Is that the guy? He's the motocross guy that he buys 10 of them, 10 at a time. I don't want to say. I think his name is Joe.
He had an address issue, but it was another order where somebody's like, "Hey, it never showed up," and it was going from Los Angeles to Los Angeles, went to Chicago, Philadelphia, Northern Nevada, I think Reno, San Francisco, and then got delivered in LA. Can you explain that to me in a logical way? No. That is not a normal thing. I don't know if it got put on the wrong bus coming out of, they just dropped it back.
When it comes to USPS, it's anybody's guess. But folks, we're back and we're running smoothly again. Every now and again, there's a hiccup. We're trying to figure out ways to make even those tiny hiccups go away. We're not making excuses for them. We're just saying that when you're doing hundreds of thousands of products per day, sometimes something slips. And there's no way around that, right? So we're doing our best to be 100% every single day. So we're glad that everyone's coming back and buying our products again. I wasn't sure that would happen because of I'm going to be honest. There was mismanagement in my company. I don't know what happened. My partner was running this thing, and I was being lied to, and I'm just being honest with you guys. And by the way, a lot of you guys left because of my partner's political views. And, people are writing to me going, "Hey, I'm coming back." So, and I appreciate that too. I don't care what anyone's political views are. I support but when you're running a company, you shouldn't be, whether you're on the right or the left or somewhere in the middle, you shouldn't be putting your views out there. Well, if you didn't agree with that guy's views and you walked away for that reason, you can come back now because he's gone. And I'm asymptomatic when it comes to political views. I don't care. That's
You've
right.
Never suffered from a political view.
I've never suffered from it. Doesn't matter to me. I don't let any of it get to me.
Is that the word you were looking for? You're agnostic.
No, asymptomatic is what I was looking for. Yeah, no, I'm agnostic.
You have no symptoms of politics.
If you're on the right, you go, girl. If you're on the left, you go, girl. And if you're in the middle, you go, girl. I don't care. I don't care what anyone's political views are. I won't tell you what mine are. Please don't tell me what yours are. And we can all get along, because the one thing I know is both you and I and everybody else, we're a little something you call Americans, and we can all have our own views and whatnot. So there you have it, folks. Before you go to Amazon, go to VinnieTortorich.com, click through the banner, puts a little coal in my fire, gets the train down the track, and we're able to keep the show free for a gazillion years in a row. On behalf of Chris Shaffer, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with enthusiasm.